Okay, we are live in 3, 2, 1. Jonathan Pritchard, how's it going?
Way too well, man. Thanks for having me.
Nah, no problem, no problem. Before we start, where exactly are you in the world? Where in the States are
I
you?
I'm located in Chicago. I used to say that I lived on the road and got my mail in Chicago, but due to the certain dynamic that we're living in, I
Yes.
spend all day, every day in Chicago.
Right, okay. You know what? I'm seeing an awful lot of stuff on the news about Chicago in the moment. Is it as kind of dangerous and as scary as the mainstream media here sort of tend to make us believe?
Maybe. I don't know. Part of it is just staying home and doing my part to not go see people. So it's always been it's a dynamic place with a lot going on,
Mm.
good and bad, and there's just you don't want to tempt fate.
No,
I
that's fair
guess is
enough.
the way to say it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So look, I was really interested for you to come on. Thanks for coming on. How about you just sort of like say a little bit about yourself? Who is Jonathan Pritchard?
You got see, yeah, my name's Jonathan Pritchard. I am the founder of an international consulting company called the Hellstrom Group, and we go around teaching and training teams on better sales, negotiation, and presentation skills, basically leveraging principled persuasion in life and business. So that's kind of the full-time deal. And I got there from a long, winding path through being a mentalist and performer. That's kind of my roots, and branched off into writing, speaking, consulting, training, basically just being super excited to help people think more clearly and share their mind in a more effective way.
Amazing. How do you define a mentalist? Is that kind of like a Darren Brownie type thing, or is it what is a mentalist?
Exactly. If you do know who Darren Brown is, you're already all the way there. You know exactly what my work is like. I love Darren. His work is phenomenal. And for folks who don't know who Darren Brown is and what he does or what a mentalist is, basically think of it like a magician who has specialized in mind reading tricks. So, reading minds, predicting the future, influencing decisions, moving things with your mind, kind of all those things that get thrown in the ESP bucket.
Mm.
That's what a mentalist does. The important distinction is usually that a mentalist doesn't claim to have genuine psychic powers. So as soon as the show is done, I'm back to being a relatively normal person, but I don't claim to have special mojo. I wasn't born with a gift that my grandma had. It's nothing like that. It is a skill. It is tricks with information and showmanship. So I say it's basically just applied psychology, showmanship, and moxie. Just having the gumption to be able to pull these scams off in
Mm.
front of an audience of 1,000, 3,000 people. So that's really it.
Amazing. So how did you get into how did you get into that? Do you have like inspiration? Did you one day see it on the telly and thought, I want a piece of this?
That was a part of it. Yeah, I was a shy kid, really weird child, and I saw a magician on the Carson show, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. That's how long ago this was,
Mm.
and and I saw the magician doing tricks with the lovely assistants, and thought, wait a minute, if I'm him, I get to work with them. All right, I know what I'm doing with my life. So that was really how my interest in magic started,
Amazing.
and my parents would buy me a beginner's magic book, and every single beginner's magic book, they break the tricks up into categories. Like, here are some card tricks, here's some rope tricks, here's the mind reading tricks, here's stuff that you can do with things you can find around the house. And wait, go back, but mind reading? So that has always just been the most interesting part of magic to me. Otherwise, it's kind of like, hey, look, I have this tricky thing that you don't have. Look
Mm.
what it can do. Oh, hey, look, here's another tricky thing that I have that you don't, and look what it can do. But mind reading is kind of focused on communication and connecting with the audience. and it's inherently interesting to the audience because it's dealing with the most interesting thing in the universe to them, which is them.
Yeah, that's a really
Like
good point. Yeah,
I'm telling them what they're already thinking. Like
yeah.
that should be the stupidest thing ever. Like that should be boring. It was like I already know what I'm thinking. Tell me something I don't know.
Mm.
But telling people what they already think will make you very popular.
Mm. And how much of that process is sort of using the power of suggestion? Is there an element that, before you sort of read somebody's mind or try to get information from them, is there an element that you're actually putting that information in there without them knowing to then extract later to make it look like it was an authentic mind reading experience?
No, there is a lot of that going on, but it's in a completely sideways direction
Right.
that has almost zero to do with the methodology of how the demonstration actually works.
Mm.
So, everybody likes to think that mentalists are really good at micro expressions and reading body language, and that is the technique that they're using to discover these things. Or like you were just asking about the subliminal implanting of information and then helping them think it's their idea and then taking credit for reading their mind instead of surreptitiously influencing their mind. That doesn't happen really. There are opportunities where you could make that happen, and that is kind of sugar on top
Right.
to create the appearance of a inexplicable miracle. But if me as a professional, I'm being paid a lot of money to come entertain these corporate executives,
Mm.
and I'm basing my business on you might be influenced by this particular hand gesture that's very subtle. That might work in 1 out of 100 times, but I'm not getting paid to succeed 1 time out of 100. I'm
Mm.
being paid to entertain 100 out of 100 times. So there are elements like that, but they're almost never the core of what's making it work. It's the little extra on top that takes it from a really good trick to a miracle.
Mm.
Also, the the idea that I can read your body language or read the body language of anybody on planet Earth because I'm just good at reading body language is fundamentally flawed. It's a really good thing to think. It's fun to think about, but it's actually really bad in practice because it's wacky. It
Mm.
doesn't exist. The body language, there is there's absolutely no universal human emotional display that means the same thing regardless of time and place. So we always think that a smile means happy. We always think, right?
Mm.
But there's no universal agreed upon definition of this particular behavioral display
Mm.
as an expression of your internal emotional experience.
I see.
So there are people that can smile when they're sad, cry when they're happy. So it's only contextually relevant. So so there's no fundamental
Mm.
human emotion either, right? We're all this bag of weirdness, and then we use the context to explain to ourselves what this weirdness means. So that meaning is contextually relevant in relationship with the culture, the time, the place,
Mm.
everything else. So the kind of Sherlock Holmes, oh, I'm really good at reading these micro expressions. If you have enough baseline exposure to that person, you could have a really keen eye to notice deviations from their normal,
Mm.
but there's no way that I could walk up to a complete stranger and go, you looked up and to the right, and that means this, and therefore you're
Mm.
thinking that.
So is that why, like, my wife just seems to know when I'm chatting shit, basically, because she just knows who I am, and
Exactly.
she can just pick up on certain patterns in my behavior and stuff like that, and how
Right.
how parents know so much about their kids as well, and I imagine kids are really easy to read. They haven't developed any form of ego that can hide their emotions and intentions and stuff like that.
Right. And
I
that's
see.
why if somebody like me who can apparently walk up, no preamble, no getting to know you, just start explaining you, that's why it's amazing. And for kids being able to read them, it's kind of a good measure of intelligence of when they learn how to lie.
Mm.
To understand the theory of mind that I can misrepresent reality to influence their perceptions, that's some pretty sophisticated stuff. So the sooner the kid learns to lie, the kind of sharper they are there.
Awesome. Well, you know, and the question that I have, I've always been interested in kind of what's really going on behind the scenes with some of these TV clairvoyant people. I won't name any names specifically. A lot of
Yes,
these
you
sort
don't
of
want to get sued.
no, no, no. But a lot of these tricks that you're mentioning with what you do, it sounds like your industry is actually just open and honest that this is trickery, but it's still fucking interesting and you can still entertain people. Are some of these like TV sort of clairvoyants using some of these same techniques and just brushing it off as spiritual woo woo in order to, you know, make money and be famous and make people cry and whatnot?
Right. I call that going to the dark side.
Yeah.
It is very attractive. It is very tempting because people want to believe. They want to know that their dead relatives are still right there next to them.
Mm,
And these people are using conjurers' tricks as demonstrations of real psychic powers or claiming to have these real psychic powers.
mm.
And you really hit a good distinction there. And I'm just going to fall back to my mentor, James Randi. That's this photo right there for those of you watching along on video.
Oh yeah,
That's
James Randi. He's awesome. I've watched a lot of his stuff
all
actually.
right.
He's
Yeah,
the one that
yeah.
just destroys people who say they actually do magic and stuff. And he used to give them big challenges, right, and offer them like 10 grand to prove it. Mate, what a
Yes.
badass!
So I helped manage that challenge. So
Amazing.
I worked with him for 4 years, managing that $1 million challenge. It
Mm,
started out as $10,000,
right.
and then a private benefactor was saying, you know, Randy, I love your work, I love what you're doing. 10,000 is a good start, but let's make this $1 million. That'll sound a lot better. So
Mm,
I'm going to set that up, and that's how it became the $1 million paranormal challenge. So working with him, I got to see exactly how to think about these kinds of things and start to understand why people want to believe things that aren't provably true and all that kind of stuff. So I helped manage applications and design testing protocol for that $1 million challenge. And that was my master's class in mentalism, how to scam people and just the whole 9 yards.
I see. Of
So
course, because in order to be able to identify, you need to know exactly how to do it. It's
right.
know thy enemy essentially.
Exactly. So there that's another point. So first is that Randy says that we're honest liars, that we're at least honest about what we're doing to our audience and
Mm,
with our audience. The ethical line is the non-honest lying, right? Which is for me those psychics on TV and all that kind of stuff.
mm,
And to the point of know your enemy, it's the same it's the same game book. It's the same plan that Houdini had. Houdini, back in the day,
mm,
1908, wrote a book called The Right Way to Do Wrong. And it explains exactly how to scam people, how to con them. Here's how this con works. Here's how this scam works. Here's how to pull this one off. And everybody lambasted him back in the day for saying, why in the world are you teaching people how to be con artists and thieves and cheats and all this stuff?
mm,
You're just training the bad guys. And his whole reason for doing that was saying the 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 better you are at actually doing this, the more skilled you'll be at recognizing it when somebody's trying to do it to you.
mm,
Otherwise, you're going to be an uneducated mark
mm,
and be much more susceptible
mm.
to having these cons
Yeah.
run on you. So it's better to be a good person who knows exactly how to do the wrong things
Mm,
than to be ignorant of how the wrong people are doing
mm.
things. Right? So that's the only way that the world gets better is
Is
good
awareness.
people
Awareness.
being capable of great evil and choosing not to.
People being capable of great evil and choosing not to. I really like that. That's a nice saying. I guess that kind of thing's similar to the behavior of, I've recently bought a new car. It's like Ford Focus Titanium, and I never really used to see them before I bought it, and now I've bought one, I just see them absolutely everywhere. And I guess it's
Right.
the kind of same methodology as once you learn how these scammers are scamming by learning how to do it, then you can identify it when somebody's trying to do it to you.
Right.
These techniques that that you use and your colleagues use in order to do these shows and do these performances, are these similar techniques used away from show business and away from the television, just in the real world, in order to sort of scam people in sort of day-to-day scams and schemes?
There are, and it's actually just fundamental communication skills. That's really what the tool is. And a scam is leveraging really good communication skills at the expense of another human being, right?
Mm,
So really it's just a tool. Communication skills are just a tool. It's how do you choose to use them to build trust and communication and connection with other human beings to the benefit of everybody, or at their unknowing expense of keeping information from them that
mm,
they would need to make a fully informed decision about whether or not to interact with you. So these are the principles and techniques of persuasion, marketing, like just all human communication
mm.
is influence. It's just that, are you doing it flailing around in the dark because you've never actually studied it? Or do you study it, get really good at knowing how it works, and then choose to employ it only to everybody's benefit?
Cool. It's a lot of information to take in. You can tell that you're an expert on communication outside of being on stage and doing all the fluffy entertainment for corporations and whatnot. What was the name of your business? Sorry, the
Oh yeah,
global.
the Hellstrom Group.
What's the Hellstrom Group doing to sort of support and help people?
The main focus there there's a 200, well, from the late 1800s, that's where the name comes from. So it's kind of like 100-year-old joke. It's an inside joke for people who read this old stuff.
Mm,
So the name basically came from a type of entertainment that was super popular in the mid to late 1800s that started out called Cumberlandism, because this dude, Stuart Cumberland, was able to do things that a normal human being shouldn't be able to do. And it was called contact mind reading. So the idea is that a person thinks of a number, and then they would put their hand on his shoulder. He would draw a big grid of numbers on a chalkboard, move his hand across the chalkboard, and then he would just sense that person's oomph when he would get close to the number that they weren't consciously aware of doing. So it was micromuscular reactions. So it's kind of like they blink and that means this, but it was more of a subconscious manifestation of, oh, you're getting close, right?
mm-hmm.
So he could feel that person's intention of, oh, he's almost to the right number, and then he just really honed that to a very high level. And it's a skill that shows up in martial arts and Wing Chun,
Mm,
Kung Fu,
mm.
of Chi Sao, that pressure sensitivity. So it's a thing that's been around a long time. All
Wow.
right.
So that's like a touch-based intuition, essentially.
Right, because the body informs the mind of what's about to happen.
Mm,
And we've seen that in fMRI machines of the impulses, the muscles trigger
mm,
before the person says, "Oh, I want to move my arm."
mm-hmm.
So your brain, your mind tells you, "Oh, I want you to move your arm," but it's really your body telling the brain to tell your mind, "Hey, let's do this thing." And then
Mm,
your mind assumes that it calls the shots when really it's just being informed of what the body's about to do.
wow.
That's a really weird thing of
Mm,
perception. So if you learn to interpret that physical connection, then you can be aware of that other person's intention before they're consciously aware of it, because you're really dialed into the physical dimension of it.
Mm.
It's what happens in partner dancing. If you ever have gone swing dancing or any
Yeah,
kind of
I've
partnered,
done quite a lot of like modern jive and stuff like that. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's exactly that. You
Mm.
can't watch. You have to feel what they're doing, and
Mm.
through that connection, you know exactly what that person's about to do, where they're going, where they want to
Mm.
go, everything, right?
Mm.
So the idea is, if you can be connected, you now understand everything you need to know about this situation or your partner or your negotiation partner, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Stuart Cumberland got world famous doing this thing called contact mind reading, and that's why it was called Cumberlandism. This dude in Germany saw him do his shtick, young kid, and he goes, "That's amazing. I want to get good at that," and wound up being even better, doing even more impressive demonstrations. His name was Alex Hellstrom, so it became known as Hellstromism.
Right.
So that's the name that stuck. Is Hellstromism is basically the ability to connect with somebody and understand them and understand what they're thinking and what they want to do. So the tagline is success through connection. Right? So if you can't connect with other people, there's no way that you could exchange value, you can't exchange ideas, you can't communicate your hopes, wants, dreams.
Mm.
So being able to connect and maintain a high quality connection to yourself, to your resources, to your problems, to your tools, to your market, life is connection. That's it. So that's the extremely not funny joke that is the name of the Hellstrom Group,
Right.
right? So the Hellstrom Group is basically the world's best people at what they do. Kind of my best friends who are just phenomenally skilled at this kind of stuff.
So is this why when you watch some of the famous mentalists like Darren Brown, when they get people to draw things, an animal or a number or their telephone number, is that why there always seems to be touching them, hand on the shoulder or hand on the wrist or hand on the is that part of that kind of like creating that physical connection of tapping into their intent?
It is to a certain degree. However, Hellstromism as a method is rarely employed nowadays because the pacing is very slow.
Mm.
So there's an element of kinesthetic awareness and comfort to help that other person feel reassured, but it's kind of like the looking for the tick. It's not as common of a method as it is from back in the day.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's talk about being on stage, and do you still get nervous? Do you still get terrified? Is that even a thing that still sort of happens anymore, or does it just feel like what, you're just going to work? It's another day at the office.
It's another day at the office.
Wow.
That's exactly how I describe it, because that stage is my office. That's where I am most comfortable, because I've spent literal decades learning how to manage that space and that experience for the audience. And the only time I get nervous or anxious is when there's some element of the experience that I don't have control over. So going out for television can be unnerving because I'm not the director. I don't have control over where these cameras are going to be. So I don't know where my angles are. They might be videoing something that the audience shouldn't ever see. And in a stage performance, I would never have to worry about. But on television, there's a camera at exactly the wrong angle who's watching exactly how the trick works. and I now have to trust that the show production team has my best interests at heart, and that I'm not being brought on as a goof, right? To be lampooned as, look at this guy, look how stupid this is. He thought he was going to be performing, and instead we're exposing his secrets, right? There's always that in the back of your head as a mystery performer, right?
Mm.
So going out for things like America's Got Talent, that's always a that's just part of the deal with the devil,
Mm.
is that you might be misrepresented, you might be lampooned and laughed at.
Mm.
It's just part of the bargain you're making for the potential exchange of the worldwide exposure
Mm.
and stamp of approval of, okay, he was on television, therefore he must be good. So it's one of those things you just go, there's a chance that might happen, but I can guarantee that I won't get the good payoff if I refuse because the potential negative payoff. So in terms of live performance, no, it's uh, the performer spends all of their time thinking about every single second that they're on stage. Like there's not there's not a moment that I haven't thought about. And that sounds like hubris,
Mm.
or like, oh, everything's under control. But really it's as much thought goes into the experience as an artist who is going to be sculpting a likeness or anything. You have to manage every single brush stroke, you have to manage every single chisel, that just everything has to be thought about. So if you, as the performer, haven't ever thought about how you enter the stage, well, now you're missing out.
Mm.
You're you're abdicating your responsibility of managing this experience for the audience, because that's what they're there for. They are in the audience to watch this thing that you've dreamt up. So the mind reading show wouldn't happen if I hadn't thought about it and planned it and practiced the skills I need in order to pull it off. So for me to ask the audience to think about any of that stuff is disrespecting the agreement of the performance.
Mm. Have you ever had anything go wrong? Have you had a bad performance? Have you had anything sort of happen on stage where it was just like, oh fuck, why me?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The worst example is itself a whole 45-minute explanation because of how much context you need to understand just how bad it was. But the highlights are, I got booed by 2,000 people
Oh my
in
god.
person with one of the world's best mentalists and one of my dear friends in the room.
Oh
And
my
this
god.
was kind of early in our time getting to know each other, and I had specifically asked him to be there, and he was in the back of the room. The silent partner in the agency that that's representing me was in the room, and this was the first time he was seeing me perform. And the 2,000 people were all people who could book me for my show. So if this went well, I'm good for the next 2 years. I'll have enough shows for 2 years worth of work. And they wound up booing me. And it was absolutely brutal. It was just the flop sweats,
Mm.
and I was just sweating through my shirt, and the people on stage were visibly disgusted, as they should be. They were just visibly repulsed, and I not one trick worked. Like they all screwed up.
Oh.
It was staggering how bad it was. And the takeaway for me was I still got booked. I
Oh.
still got booked. And it wasn't because I did a good job. Because I didn't. It was horrible. No, I should have never worked ever again.
Oh my god. How early on in
Well,
your career was it?
it was like it was in the first year of being a full-time professional
Oh
in
shit.
in a market. Um, but what happened was that performance was awful, earth-shatteringly bad, and my agent wound up 6, 8 months later, as part of the regular outreach, reaching out to somebody who had happened to be in that audience because they're a booker, and she goes, "Oh yeah, and we got a mind reader, Johnny Savant. That's my stage name. It was for a while, mainly for colleges. That way, college kids couldn't look me up and then cause
Yeah,
trouble.
of course.
Um, so so my agent was going, "Yeah, Johnny Savant. He's our mentalist, Johnny Savant. Johnny, that name sounds familiar. Okay, yeah. Let's book him." It was just because the name recognition.
Yeah. Well, they
But
do say
he
like bad. There's no such thing as bad press, right? I mean, unless you're
Right.
doing something real, like Epstein. That name's that's gone forever.
Exactly.
But like in
Exactly.
this context, fair.
Right. So it was just that name recognition, that familiarity, but she had forgotten why she
Wow.
remembered the name and therefore interpreted that meaning as, "Oh, I guess he must be good because I've heard of him."
Mm.
Not accurate, not true at the time, but fortunately I've gotten better and that hasn't happened. But I'm now bulletproof. Like
Yeah.
I don't care how badly it goes.
How did you overcome, like, how did you feel like after? I know you had all these things in the background, you were actually getting booked and it wasn't kind of the end of the world, you knew, but was there like any like low level of anxiety, or like, because that's traumatic really for someone trying to break into an industry based on reputation and performances and stuff like that. How did you have to sort of overcome any form of
Yeah.
anxiety and performance anxiety after that?
For me, I think it was that I have extraordinarily kind people in my life. And that mentor who is in the room, and he's just a dear friend of mine now. He was very kind to me. He was like, "Listen, man, that happens. It's okay. It's not the end of the world." And for him being an old timer in the industry and having decades more experience than I
Mm.
did, for him to just go, "Look, you don't need to spiral out about this. It's okay. It happens. I've had it happen to me multiple times. You'll take what you can from it, learn not to screw up like that anymore, and you'll be fine." So having a mentor who has kind of crashed and burned and made it out of the wilderness alive too,
Mm.
that is invaluable. So that's why I always like to say, if you're going to listen to a guru or any kind of person giving advice, I
Mentor or
would
coach.
much, yeah, I would much rather have the dude who's all scarred up and
Mm.
crashed and burned and almost died from wolves, but he fought him off with his bare hands. I'm like, that dude, I want that guy in my corner more than somebody who just read a book, is educated, just graduated with a degree, and now is an authority. Thanks,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
no thanks. So I'll take brutal
Yeah.
experience any day.
Yeah, of course, same. In terms of your sort of traveling around, and I know you used to do a lot of stuff in Orlando, particularly Animal
Hmm.
Kingdom. What was the sort of lifestyle like at the beginning? I'm assuming you were a young guy, and I imagine you started feeling like you were living the dream at one point. What was that kind of those first few years like, sort of traveling around, and how did you
It
just sort
was,
of keep your head on straight?
I didn't. That's the real answer.
Yeah,
The
fair.
real answer is I didn't. Okay. Part of having the stage name was the intention of keeping my head on straight. So
Mm,
the stage name, that is me. That is rock star me. That's the touring performer me. And then Jonathan is the mild mannered person who likes to have human relationships
mm,
and is normal, and there's that air gap, there's that buffer. But I didn't. I used the Johnny Zavant character as a way to run away from any of the problems I was creating by being on the road so much.
mm,
So in a way, traveling around and living the life was awesome. It was
mm,
fantastic.
mm,
Getting paid to travel. Part of it though was that I had the belief that no, I'm a full-time performer. I'm a professional here. I don't have one of those day jobs. So I would have a show, one a month, and then say, well, this is, I'm just paying my dues. I know I'm getting behind on all my bills and everything, and oh, I'm now so low on money. I have to borrow money from a friend
mm.
to pay the rental car to go to this show, hope to God they have the check and that it's made out to me instead of my agent so that I can deposit it and it'll clear in time for me to buy gas to get back home. So that was a very real part of way too much of my life.
Really?
Really, to be honest, was I had that belief that I'm a full-time performer and therefore solely depended on the performing, where if I had actually given up the belief that I'm only a performer and that's the only way for me to think about myself as a valuable person, I could have gotten a day job in marketing and sales and whatever that's flexible. And then I would have had money and I wouldn't have started to resent performing and that whole 9 yards, right? Another angle of it was I got married. I met this wonderful woman who was friends with Ariel in Orlando speak. So I wound up marrying a Disney princess, which was
Amazing.
awesome, right?
Yeah,
and
of course.
then I went on the road and she was like, this isn't what I signed up for.
Oh.
And that's understandable, right? So then there was that kind of friction, and it was one of those things where just at the back lizard part of my brain, I knew, yeah, this isn't going to work long term. So then I just hit that big red eject button and just crashed that relationship against the rocks. Like, and I'm not saying that's a good way to do things. I'm just saying that's how I decided to do it. And
just clean break, just bolted out of there, basically.
Oh, no, it was very messy.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have to get into it, but
yeah, exactly. I made bad decisions.
Okay. There was a very pissed off mermaid swimming about, essentially.
Yes, absolutely. And not once do I ever fault her for any of the reactions that she had to any of the things I decided to do. So that's part of the this makes sense. Let's go our separate ways. So it wasn't always pretty and smooth sailing and easy. So that was the crashing in the wilderness part of my life. And then because like I say, part of it was I got married, I got fat, I got divorced, I got fatter. I just let all of my life spiral out. And then going on the road was the one escape from this misery that I had created for myself.
Because you could be Johnny,
right?
Such
Johnny
and such,
Z,
of course.
Johnny Zavant.
Johnny
yeah,
Z,
exactly.
of course. Yeah.
Johnny Z doesn't have those problems.
No.
Johnny Z's a rock star.
Yeah.
He knows everything. Look at him. He's so cool. Jonathan is a miserable jerk. He was awful, right? So there was a lot of stuff that I had to work through and work on. And a lot of that personal work started when I started a martial arts practice. I was just kind of like, I need to learn how to handle myself and not make decisions that are going to put me in worse and worse situations. And the first part of that is learning what a bad situation looks like, and then identifying what decisions I've been making that puts me in there, and then recognizing that that's not a good strategy for self-defense. So self-defense, everybody thinks, I got to protect myself from an attacker, from this random person with a knife. Nope, you are the person you need to defend yourself from, because you could be sabotaging yourself 24/7 every day of your life. So you have the most opportunity and motive to screw yourself over.
Yeah.
So how about you stop doing that?
I thought
that is a good idea.
It's great advice. I mean, something that I sort of realized within myself since getting into sort of meditation and swapping sort of fiction for self-help. You know, I stopped watching movies and television programs, and I started listening to podcasts and reading books and stuff. And something that I actually had this self-realization that it wasn't my environment or other people that were pissing me off and getting me down. It was my reaction to them that was actually the thing that was holding me back and really making, me either sad or angry. And the second I realized that is actually my reaction to everything then that puts the responsibility on me. That
Yep.
it's really tough to blame everything and go down the blame game and get caught in that negative thought loop sequence from brain and body, when actually just fucking everything's your fault, man. And just stop
Exactly.
it.
The problem you see everywhere is you.
Exactly.
That's it, man. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
the only problem is you. That's it. You're the only common
Mm.
denominator to all of it. Straighten your shit out. Get a handle on it. Stop beating yourself up.
Mm.
You are your worst enemy.
Yeah, it's great advice. So where's Johnny Z now? Does he pop up every now and again? Is it just like is he just a bathroom mirror type of guy now, or is he
Yeah, you gotta spin around 3 times and sacrifice a chicken, and then his demon spirit shows up. No, I still perform as Johnny Savant, mainly only in colleges, and so the agent still represents me as Johnny Savant, and that's still a character that I have. And most of the magic world, I wouldn't say that I'm famous in the magic world, but I know enough people who know me as Johnny Savant. It's like I've consulted with Chris Angel, Penn and Teller. I've been on Fool Us, and Randy introduced Penn and Teller to each other, and he's part and parcel of their backstory and a big part of their success. So I'm in the magic world enough, and most people know me as Johnny Savant in the magic world. So he's still there. He's much less of a self-serving prick.
That's growth,
Yeah.
isn't it? That's
Yeah.
growth. That's evolution at the end of the day. And I think
Yeah.
we all go through that. I think men have a habit of going about it a really kind of violent way, where we just, 1 minute we have these huge ego, strongly held beliefs, and then the next thing our world is just crumbling down around us, and we need to pivot and do something different. And I think that's a kind of a spiritual progress that we all have to go through, sort of, at some point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what's lockdown done for you? I've been following a lot of kind of similar people to yourself, performers, extroverts, people who get the majority of their kind of dopamine, as it were, and their self-reward from performing, and and all that's been taken away just like that, right? For what is it, 6-7 months now, 7-8 months. How did that affect you, and kind of you as a person as well? You've had to let go of this huge thing that was a massive part of your life for however many years. How did you deal with that?
There's a lot packed into there. Holy crap. I miss it more than I thought I would, because of the work that I had been doing of disassociating myself from the I'm a performer and this is how I get my positive reinforcement as a human being. Right? So I had kind of worked through the rock star destruction spiral already. So I didn't look to the audience as my sole source of meaning and purpose. So I had already kind of broken from that and saw it as a fun thing I get to do, instead of this is a thing I have to do because this is who I am, right? So as the gigs and performing and speaking and trade show work started to evaporate, I thought I would be less affected, right? But the longer it goes on, I'm like, man, I really do miss how much fun it is to do these live performances, and good Lord, this is awful. So on that front, it's been tough. The other front is I'm actually super introverted. I'm extraordinarily introverted. And I would rather go 2 weeks without seeing another human being. Like, I love that. To me, that's just perfectly fine. I'll get my social interaction when everybody in that room knows who I am. Like, that's cool. Like, that's the dynamic that I love. I hate normal social dynamics where I have to introduce myself. Like, listen, if you don't, if my name isn't on a big ass poster outside the door, I don't want to show up. I'd rather just go home. If I'm not being paid to be around these people, I would rather not be around people.
Wow.
Right? So, so there's that part of it. So in that dimension, lockdown has been great.
Oh,
Like
I see what
I
you mean.
love it.
That does make an awful lot of sense, actually. It's kind of like it's almost like a plumber or a builder or a mechanic have to work on their own shit. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that,
Right.
as a web developer, digital marketing guy, like the last thing I want to do is work on my own website, work on my own, marketing stuff. So I guess it's that similar dynamic, and I guess to a lot of people that sounds ridiculous, and you'd
Uh-huh.
get a lot of pushback on that. But I think from a
Yeah.
psychological point, you're programming yourself to treat your skills as a commodity, and now you're now pretty much kind of psychologically in your subconscious being forced to do that for free just for that social interaction and to hold on to that level of humanity.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
interesting.
There was a study in like 1970s, maybe 1973. I could be making that number up, but Google me, double check me. But there's a study done with kids who were drawing and just making art, right? Just doodling, whatever, at that part of the day at school, and they were broken up into, I believe, like three distinct test groups. The one's the control, the other one, or I don't know. I'm just making the look at the details, but the gist of it was there was one group of kids that was told, "Hey, if you draw, then you'll get a sticker." There was another group that drew and then was randomly given a sticker, said, "Hey, you drew. Here's a sticker. There you go."
Mm,
And the other one didn't receive anything. They were the control group, right?
mm.
Then they checked back in after running that for a little while, and then nothing. They checked back. The kids who had the quid pro quo, like, if you draw then you'll get sticker, weren't drawing anymore because they weren't being paid with the sticker.
Mm.
So they're like, why would I draw? I'm not getting a sticker for it. The kids who randomly got a sticker were still drawing because it was an unexpected benefit of like, oh, that was neat.
Oh,
Okay,
I
cool.
see.
The kids who didn't get anything were still drawing because that was just fun for them to do.
Mm,
So it's the difference between an explicit external motivator is the fastest way to erode your intrinsic enjoyment of doing that thing.
mm,
So as a performer, that's exactly what happens is this is my job. I'm a professional now. I get
mm,
paid to do this.
mm,
If I'm not being paid to do it, why am I going to do it?
mm.
And it can quickly erode the original joy you had that made you be interested in pursuing this in the first place. So the first inkling that you're a professional is beginning to hate what it is you used to love because it's not paying you as much anymore,
Wow. I mean, that's
right?
that's kind of a sad story as well, in a sense, isn't it?
Right. So that's a really good recipe for learning to hate what it is you used to love the most.
Wow.
And that's why following your passion and making a job out of your
Mm,
passion is often a real good recipe for resentment and hating yourself and destroying
mm,
the joy you used to have. Right. So
mm.
that is a very real danger and something that I wish more people had on their radar as a potential thing that they're going to have to wrestle with. Right. So yeah, I've come to terms in the social dynamic that okay, yes, I'm a professional mind reader. This is what I do for a living. Yes, this is inherently interesting. They don't get to meet many mind readers. This is probably the only chance that they get to talk to somebody with as weird a path as me. So don't hate them for their curiosity and appreciation.
Mm.
This is a you thing, Jonathan. We're okay. Don't project your self-hatred on them. So this is some really weird stuff that happens when you decide to make a living from your interest.
Mm,
So I think it's not talked about enough.
mm,
It's not a piece of the success porn cycle
mm.
of everybody's like, make a job out of your passion,
Yeah.
live free, and it's all gravy
Mm.
and butterfly wings and whiskers, and it's all rainbows and happy cotton candy. And then everybody goes, oh, I follow my passion. It's all cotton candy and
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, yeah.
And then their life implodes. They destroy their relationships. They are miserable and angry at themselves, and then externalize that as fundamental frustrations of everybody else.
Mm,
Like, that's not good.
mm,
Wait, nobody told me about that.
mm.
Like, nobody told me that could happen. You're like,
Mm.
yeah, that's likely to happen. That's really what
Do you think
that's what
that's
you
why?
signed up
Do you
for.
think that's why you see a lot of kind of Hollywood actors make it big, have these huge careers on the television, and then you gradually start seeing a lot of them just go back to the West End and stage shows, and then eventually like pantomimes and stuff. Is it because they're just skin all of a sudden, or is it just they're actually just doing it for the love of it again? You know, they've just gone through this huge kind of millions and making it a career and getting caught up in the politics and the bureaucracy of it all, and now they can just go back to who they were at the beginning, as actors
Yeah.
performing because they loved doing it.
I think there would definitely be a big part of that. Uh, Something I often think about is if failure doesn't destroy you, the universe will take a good shot at you with success. So if you
Yeah.
make it through
Mm,
the failure and
mm,
you're still not beaten down, all right, so now let's try throwing success your way and see how well you handle that.
mm,
Because you could handle being poor, broke, and nothing else going on, but you made it through that. So now let's give you
mm,
everything you've ever wanted.
mm.
And it could do that, right?
Yeah, of course.
Of part of that whole everybody loves my character, everybody loves me as the actor, as the roles I'm playing. They don't know me, right? That's the Keanu Reeves thing where he was like, nobody knows the person in the Mickey suit.
Mm,
Like they love Mickey. They don't know who's in the suit. They
mm,
don't care. And if people only love the public presentation of you, it can be real tough to deal with on the inside for yourself
mm,
because there's a lot of self-loathing there,
mm,
right? Of, oh, they only love me for my work. They don't know me. If they lived with me, they'd hate me just like I hate myself,
mm,
right? And it's just this weird hall of mirrors kind of thing where nobody knows you, nobody knows who you are, what you think, how you feel,
mm,
and the only connection that you have to the outside world is through a lie of a
mm,
thing you aren't.
mm. So,
So that's, yeah,
so I guess a lot of people, they have a choice to make in that position. They can wallow in feelings of illegitimacy, or they can get the fuck out there and find their purpose, right? And
right.
I guess that's exactly what you done with the Hellstrom stuff, and you've gone and done that. Do you think there is a lack of sort of support and advice within the success porn? I'm gonna call it an industry, man. It's massive. Holy shit! This
Yeah.
self help stuff's getting out of hand.
Yep.
Is there a lack of that kind of awareness of that you know aspect of being a performer?
Yeah, I think so. Because it's kind of like every, yeah, if you make it big, being something you're not, that's a problem.
Mm,
And the idea is that, well, I've tried being authentic, Jonathan, and I haven't gotten anywhere. So I can't be successful being who I am.
mm,
I have to be something I'm not until I become it, and and then I will deserve my success. Right? That's a real tough
mm,
trap too, right? So it's kind of like people believing that they can't be who they are, and the only way to be successful is to be who they aren't. That leads to that trap of nobody loves me for me
mm,
because they haven't figured out how to let go of the parts of themselves that are holding themselves back from being the best version of themselves to live out loud,
mm,
so that it pushes the wrong people away and pulls the right people in. So there are ways of being better you that you haven't tried yet,
wow.
right?
Mm,
So so many people think that the only way to be successful is to be something they're not, and that is hell.
mm,
So another angle of it is they're afraid of being who they are because of where they grew up or who they are around or their family or whatever
mm,
gave them a belief that they can't be themselves.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the definition of an ego, right? They're living their life by the experience that they've had, and they're allowing those strongly held opinions of themselves to prevent them from expressing that person of who they are. So that limits them to only the activities and to attract the type of people in their lives they feel like they're worthy of, right? And
Right, right,
okay, it's interesting.
right. So that's the thing is, the more scared you are of being who you are, the less you'll attract the people who want you for you.
Mm,
So the louder you can be about who you are, the easier time the cool people who would love you for you can find you.
mm,
And if nobody is turned off by you, if nobody is like, yeah, this isn't what I'm about,
mm,
well then it's a magnetic thing.
mm,
If there's no magnetic repulsion,
mm,
there's no magnetic attraction either.
mm.
You're just inert.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. So you got to dial your awesome up to 11 so that the right people go, yeah, that's the awesome I want in my life. And now you've got that authentic connection between people who see you as you and want you around anyway.
I guess that comes from fear of rejection, right? And you know, we were kind of trained to kind of feel that from a very young age with school and all of these huge factors were judged on. And then, you know, the majority of television that I think I remember watching from a young age was panel shows and people being ridiculed because it was funny and it sold. It was like bear betting, it got clicks and viewers and whatnot. So, you know, that kind of makes a lot of people, especially in our generation, terrified of humiliation, terrified of rejection, and then it becomes very easy to be controlled and manipulated then because you feel like you need to become somebody else. And yeah, so I guess it's that age old, and as corny as it sounds, it's just simply staying true to yourself, you know, and people have been
Yeah.
giving that advice for hundreds of years and it's
there's
still
always
relevant
that,
today.
yeah. And there's always that little voice in the back of your head that knows. It just knows.
Mm,
Every single time that you make a decision that is out of alignment with that little voice, hey, this is a really bad idea. You're going to regret this later.
mm,
No, I have all these reasons and justifications why I'm going to do it this way. Yeah, but it's going to cost you. And then you're going to eventually go, you're eventually going to listen to me one way or the other, but okay, sure. Go that other path and destroy your life. And then I'll tell you, I told you so. Like, ah, dang it.
But
So.
how do people combat that? How do people combat that overthinking, kind of, you know, that self doubt?
hmm For me, and for 1,500 years, like just as far back as you want to go, there's answers, and it all starts with a physical discipline. Whether it's seated meditation, whether it's martial arts, whether it's yoga, you have to have some sort of physical discipline.
Mm,
Not just a habit, not just a thing I do every once in a while and when I feel like it, but you have to have some sort of physical practice that is structured and rigid to give you that shape.
mm,
And that will be the context where all of your failings and shortcomings come to light. Every single one of them will show up in your physical discipline. And through the practice of maintaining that physical discipline then gives you the emotional control, then gives you the mental control, then gives you the more abstract energy control. But there's a reason why every tradition is structured.
mm,
It's a discipline. Again, it's not just a preference, it's not a want, it's not a hobby. You have to start on the physical level. You are a physical being. I don't care how you think you got here. The universe dreamt you up. You're physical.
mm.
You are this body. There's no separation between the mind and the body. You are this thing. Deal with it. And anybody who tries to leapfrog over that physical nature and be like, oh, it's just all mindset, it's just hope, wish, and pray your way to success, they're skipping over the basics, man.
Mm.
If you ignore those foundations,
Mm.
they're going to crumble, and everything that you've built on a bad foundation isn't going to stand either. So you have to have some physical practice, and if you don't, there's trouble on your horizon.
So physical practice, meditation, sports, martial arts, even just making the damn bed in the morning. And I guess that's the, you look at Karate Kid, the new one with Jackie Chan. Although I think the originals had it when he's just putting the coat on the peg and then chucking it on the floor, putting the coat on the peg and chucking it on the floor, and putting the coat on the peg and chucking the floor. Or with meditation, when you're just observing your thoughts, you have one, you acknowledge it, and then you come back, and then rinse and repeat again and again and again. I guess that's making you a stronger minded person. It's conditioning you to kind of just be aware of your environment and being aware of your surroundings and being aware of your struggles and not being consumed by them. And I guess that is what leads to that level of equanimity and peace.
Yes. Yep.
In whatever you do, in economically or in your career, or you could take that into the relationships you have with other people, and especially when you're being creative, I feel that helps the most.
Right, because you've had all the fights, you've had all the frustrations with yourself, all the things that you would be having out with other people, you get to have with yourself. And if you can't even control this meat sack full of water, like, how in the world do you expect to control this thing that's even wilder called your mind?
It's very true.
How in the world do you expect to control your emotional response and your decisions from this wild thing called your emotional state if you can't even sit with your back straight for 10 minutes staring at the wall? Right? Like, no, that's step one. Right? And even seated meditation, as boring as it is an intensely physical experience. It is a physical practice, and this is another angle that I don't think gets enough airtime either, which is meditation is not just sitting there however you like, do whatever you like. No, meditation is a discipline, and here's the particular way to sit, and if you fall out of that alignment, your mind is out of alignment too. So your physical state is your barometer for understanding your mental control. So when you say you sit upright, you sit either cross-legged, half lotus, full lotus, whatever you're currently capable of doing, that's your baseline. You sit up, you put your right hand down, you put your left hand in it, your thumbs touch in the universal mudra, right? That's the fancy term for it. But basically, it's just a little oval with your hands and your thumbs. Okay, well, what's really cool about that is if your mind starts going to stressful stuff and you start freaking yourself out and you've got a lot of resistance and all that anger and everything, your thumbs will start to press together and go up, right? Because you're just and they push together and they kind of form a little steeple. So that's your barometer of, oh, I'm too tense. Or if you relax and you start falling asleep and you're just letting your mind mush, you'll realize that you're leaning over, your thumbs have either disconnected or drooped completely. Now you're too mushy. Right? So that's why it's the middle way. You have to maintain that proper alignment. And if your mind drifts, you can instantly realize it by realizing that your body is out of alignment. You can't keep your body in alignment with your mind drifting. It's impossible. So the only way you keep your body in control is to keep your mind in control. So there's no way to escape it. It is first and foremost a physical practice. And it's through that maintaining that physical alignment that every second that you keep that correct posture is another second that this awareness maintains control and just witnessing the mental state as well.
Amazing. So do you meditate yourself? Is it a regular practice for you?
Yeah, for me, my meditation is my kung fu practice.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, cool,
and
cool.
and the kung fu practice is a choreography
Mm.
of postures, so it's very similar to yoga in that way. The difference, I always like to say, is if somebody tried to push me off my mat, I would know what to do about it.
Mm.
That's the main difference. But it's that you can't have the proper postures and transitions between those postures if you aren't there in the moment to manage those details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, look, Jonathan, as we draw it to a close, is there anywhere sort of people can hear from you? What social media channels do you have? What's your website?
Yeah, the best website to find me at is jonathanpritchard.me. So that's where all my articles, I've been writing articles all over on different projects,
Mm-hmm.
and then I decided, you know what, screw it, let's just put this all in the same bucket. So you'll find my kung fu, my art, my consulting, my training, all that stuff is on that site.
Mm-hmm.
If you want the experience of being locked in a car with me for 14 hours a day and then me just saying whatever random stuff comes to mind, come find me on Twitter. That's that is where I am most active and most present on the World Wide Web, and that is _Pritchard, and that's hard enough to spell. So good luck.
Well, look, Jonathan, thanks so much for coming on the show. You're a super interesting guy. I think the world has an awful lot to learn from you. Lots of really interesting experience, both, in the performing industry, but then, of course, in the communication, the psychology stuff. I find extremely interesting. So, really grateful for you to come on, and no doubt we'll have you on again at some point.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be able to share my thoughts. So thanks for having
Awesome.
me on.
Thanks, Jonathan.